Jacqueline Shawn, Marketing Manager for the Electronic Security Association. Just a couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. All callers will be muted for the duration of the webinar, so please be sure to use your question or your chat log to submit questions, and all questions will be addressed at the end of the webinar. Additionally, a recording of the webinar will be available in the online YSP resource library at esaweb.org. CE credits are available for attending, so please check the chat log shortly for instructions on how to request your CE accreditation form. Today's webinar on the 6 keys to building a high-value business is presented by Kelly Bond, Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Alarm Capital Alliance, where she is responsible for increasing sales through acquisitions and driving the overall business-to-business development strategy for the company. She began her work in the security alarm industry in 1997 and currently serves as the Electronic Security Association's chairperson for the National Scholarship Committee and the co-chair for the Membership Committee. Without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Kelly.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you all today. I hope that you will find the content of this webinar to be useful in your own business and that you can adopt some of these practices immediately, ultimately with the goal of making your business more valuable. I'm going to go through quite a bit of content today, so if you think of things as I'm tracking through, please write them down or keep in mind your questions, and we will have time for questions at the end. And you'll see also when I get to the third slide, we had a little technical faux pas that I'll ask you to be patient with us. I want to show you a video, and we had a hard time getting the sound to come up. So I'm actually going to be giving you the sound through my speakerphone. I hope you'll be able to hear it okay. If you can't, the video is also available on YouTube, so I can send you a link if you let me know afterwards. So what we're talking about today, as Jacqueline said, is the 6 keys to making your business more valuable. And this is going to be a 2-part webinar. So today I'm going to go through the first 3 steps, and I will try to touch on as many things as I've addressed in my years of doing due diligence and looking at different companies. And hopefully there will be some things that will resonate with you that you can start using, like I said, immediately. So again, thank you for your time, and let's get started. Let's get started if my PowerPoint will get moving. Okay, well, I apologize. I'm having some technical difficulties now. There we go. All right, if you woke up one day and you decided you wanted to sell some of your accounts to free up cash from your company, or even exit the business completely, would you be ready and able to do it? Could you start the process of looking for a buyer, more so a buyer who will respect the company that you've built, and one who recognizes the value of the accounts you've created? Whether they're commercial, residential, any type of accounts, does that buyer really see how valuable they are? Would you be able to provide a potential buyer with the proper information they need in order to conduct their due diligence? And can you get this to them in an easy and timely fashion? Do you have it ready electronically? Can you answer the questions that they're going to be asking you to learn what they can about your business? In other words, are you ready? No matter what your timeline is, the key to achieving your goals, both business and personal, is getting the most value for your business. To maximize your value during an acquisition requires good planning. Don't wait until you're ready to decide to sell to get your company and your accounts in top shape. Companies that consistently run their business operations according to a strategic end-game plan ultimately attain the most value for your accounts. So you've certainly heard it said before, start with the end in mind. Okay, so here's the technical part. I hope you'll all be able to hear this video and that it will track quickly. So I'm going to move to speakerphone, so bear with me one moment.
You're in the home security business. What you offer isn't even measurable. After all, how do you measure a sigh of relief? Your customers can sleep at night knowing their homes and families are safe and secure. Wouldn't it be great? Susan also wants to sell, use the capital to start a new venture, but wants to retain part of the company to maintain a steady income. Maybe, like Larry, you're afraid that once you show them how you've been running your business, they might run. Some days you'd just like to sell it all and go cruise the Caribbean. Other days we take your pride of ownership to heart so you can move forward with confidence. So let's get started. First, well-developed exit strategies are critical to obtaining the highest value for your company or accounts. So you want to review your exit strategy at various stages of your company MR. So you need to understand what it means and how to improve it. Let's take Harold, Susan, and Larry for about the same per month. Harold's attrition rate, other things being equal. Another way to increase the value of your company is to keep good records. It seems that not being able to keep up with his record-keeping duties is exactly why Larry needs an acquisition partner into a potential partner. Having solid collection practices keeps accounts from falling through the cracks, lowering attrition rates, and increasing value. Deferred revenue your business before the end of that quarter, the buyer would be entitled to a deferred revenue deduction. Valid and enforceable subscriber agreements can protect both your company and its valuable protection for your company. Potential buyers look for sound business partners. The special station issues affect the way you do business. Were programmed on shared lines that he did not own or control, resulting in an on-site visit to his crew that they were in control of their dedicated receiver lines. And Susan even mentioned, with the central station, streamlines the process of getting service to your customers, Susan, Larry, and you to unlock the most value in your company.
The video that we just created this year, doing the video, was just to get people thinking, where am I in my business and what do I want to ultimately be able to do? Clearly, we're representing 3 different companies and 3 different stages in our video. Harold, who's nearing retirement and is thinking about selling everything, the brick and mortar. He's got employees that he's considering. He's got a fleet of vehicles. He's been running his business for many years, and frankly, he's got some work that he needs to do on his business before he's ready to really sell it. Susan, on the other hand, is ready to make some changes in her business because she needs to further capitalize on what successes that she's had. Or she may potentially want to start a new venture because she's kind of maxed out where she is and what she's doing. But she wants to be debt-free in order to be able to do so. Then there's Larry, and like his company, he's young and ambitious, and his business is growing like wildfire. But he needs a partner that can help him handle the load on the back end, basically a financial partner. And while their companies are at different stages, their problems really remain the same. How do they find the right acquisition partner? A partner that can appreciate the hard work and dedication that it takes to be successful in our industry. First, it starts by building a high-valued company. So up here, I'm going to actually quickly go through all 6 keys, but we're only going to focus on the top 3 today. So, the first thing we want to look at is planning your growth and exit strategy. What does that really mean? Okay, so today I have 1,000 accounts. It's a mixture of commercial and residential. I'm thinking of expanding into a new market, or I'm looking at possibly trying a new marketing effort to grow, one side of my business or the other. What have you really planned for that? Have you sat down and said, all right, well, this is what it's going to look like? Or is this kind of a spur-of-the-moment thought, oh, well, so-and-so down the street is offering, automation and interaction and all these packages, and they're doing it for X dollars, and I think I can do it cheaper. There's not really much planning that's gone into that at this stage, but you can be very successful with that if you think it through and then think of what it's going to look like at the end. The next thing is, once you've brought on all of these accounts, is monitoring and managing your attrition. I'm going to get into this a little bit more a couple slides from now, but you must understand, as an acquirer or a lender, this is the first thing that we're going to look at in your business. How many accounts you're losing? What is the reason for your loss? What is feeding your attrition? Following sound operating procedures. Do you have plans that say, okay, every time we bring on a new customer, we're going to follow steps 1 through 10 to get them into our system and to ensure the success that we have with that customer going forward? And those steps may be something that you do over a period of years, or it may be, you know, what do you do just to get them in the door? And have you really thought about, you know, the long term, you know, how you're behaving with each new customer that comes in? You know, it's also including your billing and your service. You know, all of your operating procedures should be done in a methodical and strategic way, again, with the end in mind. We're going to focus on those top 3 today. I'm going to quickly go through the next 3, so hopefully you'll be enticed to come on the second part of this webinar next month. So the next one is making sure you have valid subscriber agreements. This is going to be the second thing that we're going to look at right after looking at attrition. Any lender or acquirer wants to see your agreements. They want to know that every subscriber has an agreement, that it does have some terms on it, that you can find all of these agreements, that they've all been signed by an authorized representative of the company as well as the subscriber or the customer. So this is something that you need to be checking on. Start looking now so that when we talk next month, you'll know where you stand on your agreements. Next thing is managing the installation and monitoring to facilitate account transfers. So this is something that you may already practice in your business when you put an account, or excuse me, when you install an account, that you take whatever measures are necessary in that panel so that you're able to access it remotely, dial into it, and then also to change it to a different receiver line if necessary remotely. So those are some things that you want to be thinking about. Also with that, I don't want to fail to mention that the types of panels that you're installing. And are you, going to install whatever's on sale this week at ADI, or are you going to stick to a consistent manufacturer and know that product really well? So be thinking about that too, because a buyer, a partner, it's something that they're going to want to know. And lastly, you want to make sure that you've got the right types of insurance. You need to make sure that you're covered. You should not only have your general liability, but you should have errors and omissions. And every state requires some form of workman's comp if you have employees. So again, we're going to focus on those last 3 next month, but for now, we'll just start in on number 1. I'm planning your growth and exit strategy. And not to be repetitive or redundant, but you will hear it say that the day you know your business best or the day that you make your sale, because you lose things over the years. You forget about key elements because they don't pop in your face every day. So, there are things that you really need to focus on to make sure that you are planning for that exit. So what are your short and long-term goals? Are you eventually going to hand off your business to your kids or your employees? From a personal standpoint, that's very important because you want to make sure that you are planning based on, at the end of the day, I'm going away, I'm like, Harold, I'm headed to the Caribbean, or do you think it might be a slow transition out of the business? And are you ultimately going to stay involved to some degree until such time that you really are ready to fully retire? But also doing that for the business so somebody else is able to come in and take over, and they're going to be able to get a clean shop. You've prepared things in a way that, that a buyer can come in, they can go through your files and they can say, all right, every single file has a contract in it. It may have a lot of other stuff in that file, but we know it has a contract. We know it will have things like a 3-day right of rescission for residential customers, et cetera. They're going to be able to come in and quickly be able to get a snapshot of your business based on the way that you set things up. Again, talking about the steps to reach those goals. Are you doing good housekeeping measures? Are you taking those steps that will make it an easy transition for you? Part of your plan is also going to be what challenges do you anticipate along the way. we are seeing this year a lot of companies start to get really busy again. Many companies across the country were definitely struggling based on what's been happening in our economy for the last 3 years. A lot of companies ended up selling because they couldn't meet their loan requirements, or they just were not able to build enough new business to keep people employed. These are things that you've got to think about as you're planning your exit. You know, what's going to happen if the economy goes bad? Or what would happen if, you know, you were out for some, you know, debilitating reason? You know, is your company going to be able to run without you? So those are things that you've got to think about as you're planning your exit strategy. Think about your time frame. You may say to yourself, I'm going to walk in the door today, I'm going to just kill it, and then 10 years from now, I'm out. I'm going to sell and move on, you know, to broader horizons. Or this may be your business. Your family may have started it 20 years ago. You've now taken over, and you have kids that you think are going to be interested in the business. So you need to think about your own personal time frame and the time frame of things for the business, what your growth steps are, and how they will work in line with the time frames that you've set up. Excuse me. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is running your operations smoothly. And what does that actually mean? And so now we're going to kind of jump back and start to talk about attrition. And I said this to you before, attrition is the first thing that we as a buyer or a lender is going to look at when we walk through the door. We want to know what you're losing. And most importantly, we want to know why you're losing what you're losing. So you want to understand, really monitor, and really be able to manage your attrition rate. Attrition is a key value, and it directly impacts how much a buyer is willing to pay for your accounts. It is important to take consistent steps to maintain an attrition rate of lower than 10%. We've seen attrition rates up in 12, 13, 14, 15% in the last few years. It's understandable based on our economy, but we also want to understand what a company is doing to really mitigate the risk of their high attrition. You know, ordinary attrition results from issues outside of your company's control. A customer may move. Unfortunately, there may be death related to it, job losses, etc. Those are the things that you really can't control, but you may be able to find ways to work with your customers to help mitigate those. You know, if there's a job loss situation, certain companies have said, we're going to work with our customer. We'll say, you know what, we don't want to lose you as a customer, so we're going to work with you, and we'll give you 3 months, 6 months, however long you decide. We're going to let you kind of sit on that period. We're going to keep monitoring you, but we'll add that to the end of your contract. We want to work with you. We want to keep your business. In some cases, companies may lower their RMR amount. If it will help keep a customer on board, that may be something that they would opt to do. Extraordinary attrition, on the other hand, occurs from when customers cancel accounts for reasons related to your company's performance. It's something like service. They're calling you for service. Several days go by. They haven't gotten a call back. They're calling you again. They've got a beeping in their panel that they've had for days, and everybody's ready to shoot themselves because they're so tired of hearing it. I assure you, you don't have a happy customer on your hands. That is a good reason to cancel. Now, you may fight them on this issue, but you should never have service as an issue as to why somebody is going to cancel with you. You know, there are other things that are extraordinary that may seem a little bit out of your control, such as a competitor's sales. You know, we've had a lot of markets where door knocking has become more prevalent, and those door knockers may come in with a pretty amazing package to your current subscriber. First of all, you need to be able to address this with your customer, and you need to be able to do everything that you can to save them. But that is something that if you're losing a lot of customers to door knocking, and I'm talking about door knocking that's done in the proper way, that it's good sales, and that's just the way that they, that they got in touch with a subscriber. A buyer or a lender is going to look at that and say, gosh, they've lost a lot of accounts due to, their competition. Another thing are marketing efforts. What are you doing that, that may be actually, offending a customer base? Are you using scare tactics in your marketing? Those are things that you really want to be cognizant of when you're thinking about what is causing your attrition. It's recommended that you track your attrition, too, with reason codes. Hopefully you're using a software program that will give you the opportunity to put in reason codes for any accounts that cancel, so that you can, get a snapshot, whether it's a 6-month or a year. And a buyer's typically going to ask you for, 1 year of attrition data, 1 year of canceled accounts. And in that time, they're going to want to see, well, what is causing the majority of the attrition? If most of it is due to moves or deaths, job loss, it's going to be much more understandable than if they're because of service. So, and you're also going to have customers that you canceled them because they didn't pay. Again, that's the right thing you should be doing, but, you also, as an acquirer, we're going to look at a whole base of accounts or a whole portfolio and say, gosh, they've got a lot of people that are canceling, that they've canceled for non-pay. What are the demographics here? What are we dealing with? Or are they just not doing a good job of collections? So those are things just to keep in the back of your mind when you're setting up your reason codes. So on your screen, you'll see that we have a metric here for you to really be able to look at your own attrition. Take a 1-year time frame. And it's not on the screen, but let me tell you, I'm going to give you another tool that I may address a little bit later as well, but I want to tell you now, as you're looking at your own attrition, take that 1-year snapshot. Go ahead and look in your own software program to see what reason codes that you have for attrition in there. And let's say, we've used this, the example that's on here, excuse me, you've got 1,000 accounts, 90 have canceled, you see what your attrition is from that, 10% attrition rate. But as you're factoring this in, there are a couple of keys that you need to remember. And the one thing I was going to tell you about just a second ago was go to your central station. Ask them for an add, delete, or an online-offline report. This is a report that they keep track of that actually shows how many accounts that you're adding and how many you're taking off. Many acquirers are going to ask you for this report. Go ahead and get this on your own. Look at this periodically. Reconcile it with your own cancellations to make sure that, A, on one side, that you are canceling everything in your own central station as you've canceled it in your billing software, but also the transverse of that. Make sure that if it's canceled in the central station, that it's canceled in your billing system. You want to make sure that those numbers match up. That is those actually are 2 tools that any acquirer or lender is going to look at to actually calculate your attrition. So again, simply defined on this, your gross attrition rate takes the total number of accounts that you've lost over the past year, plus all of your accounts over 90 days past due. That's something else. Industry standard says accounts that are over 90 days should, in effect, be canceled. So remember, somebody is going to look at your receivables and they want to see those 90 days. So take those. So again, to take your number of accounts that you've lost over the past year, plus all of the accounts that you have over 90 days, and divide by your average number of accounts owned over the past 12 months. So let's use Susan as an example. Susan had 90 of her accounts cancel over the last year. Excuse me. And over the past 12 months, she'd averaged 1,000 accounts. So her gross attrition rate is currently at 10%, which is very strong today. Understand, too, that because of the fact that Susan, has the number of accounts that she has, and she's losing at a small number every year, the value of Susan's business is going to be higher than somebody who's attrition is running 14, 15%. And in some cases, a potential buyer will not even consider the account base that's running at 14, 15 or higher attrition numbers because they just don't want to take on that kind of loss. Okay, so moving on from attrition, the next thing we want to talk about is the keys to building a high-value business are adopting sound standard operating procedures, or SOPs, like I touched on a little bit earlier. Having sound standard operating procedures in place is an excellent way to provide great customer service to your subscribers, which can help you lower your attrition rate and increase revenue. You're going to want to make sure your company's SOPs include maintaining accurate subscriber and business records. Excuse me, just one second. Okay, thank you. This type of information helps drive the day-to-day management of your company, and more importantly, it helps to establish the value of your accounts when a potential buyer is conducting their due diligence. Within this, you should employ a process that tracks billing data and service installation information. So you really want to focus on what your software is allowing you to do. Does it allow you to automate many of the standard record-keeping functions that you have every day, such as setting up a service call or keeping notes in a customer's account? Does it give you notice when you're about, somebody's going to hit 90 days in aging? What functions does it give you to help make you more valuable? So using your software to automate many of the standard record-keeping functions also has the added advantage of allowing your team to generate the types of financial reports that a potential buyer is going to find valuable. Those are going to be, like I said, aging reports, rate at risk reports. That's what we call anything that's in that 60 to 90 days. That's something that we find very important. What's about to roll over? Is it going to give you reports on what we touched on before, reason codes for cancellations? Is it going to show you customers that are always late in paying? What does it give you the snapshot of that you can easily run? Also, does it give you the capability of doing a data dump? Can you go into your software program and choose several different fields that you would like to be able to see in a snapshot, run a report, export that report into Excel or a CSV file, and ultimately be able to email it out? Does it give you that functionality so that you can really work with it and that you can share the information in it with somebody that's looking at you, a potential lender or buyer or partner? You also want to use your software to conduct regular audits to monitor your payments, collections, your aging trends. Do you see at certain times of the year? Christmas is coming. Are you going to see that your payments tend to be coming in slower? Obviously, you want to see where attrition rates are. All of these things are going to further help you reduce your account loss and increase your value. One of the things that I talked about before, and again, if I'm repetitive, I'm sorry, but I think it's very important, is your relationship with your central station, and that report that I mentioned before that we always look at very early on is that add, delete, or online offline report. You want to be able to reconcile your accounts monthly. This should be a standard operating procedure in your company. If you've canceled the account in your billing, you need to cancel it in the central station. There's no reason that that account should be sitting out there. A, it's still costing you money. B, you're still providing free monitoring for a customer that you've canceled. So just put it on the calendar. Reconcile those reports. Many central stations will, they have a login, so you can go in and run these reports as frequently as you choose. But it's something that no matter who does it or how often you do it or how you have to get the report, make sure you're doing that on a monthly basis. You want to make sure that in an acquisition, whether you're doing one or whether you're about to be acquired, that you are able to give a good snapshot of how things are set up in the central station. Do you own your own receiver lines? This is imperative. If you don't, you need to understand what it's going to look like for you to actually be able to get the accounts that you have out of that central station if the buyer that you're working with doesn't use that central station. So let's say, for example, Larry has 500 accounts. He learned early on to negotiate well with the central station, and he got a great price. But what he forgot to do was say, please make sure that you've set me up on my own receiver line. I don't want to share my line with any other dealer. Well, he had already put half of his accounts on. And unfortunately, when he set those up, he didn't set the panel up to be able to be dialed into. So now Larry is faced with having to go out and site visit every single one of those 250 customers that are not on a receiver line that he owns. This could limit him hugely. It may take him months to be able to make all of those site visits. And forget the expense. I mean, think of every time you have to roll a truck to go just change or reprogram a panel, what the cost is going to be. So make sure, if you haven't done it today, do it when we get off this webinar. Call your central station, ask for your own receiver line. They're not going to think anything of it. Today, most of them will automatically give someone their own receiver line. And if you do have accounts that are on shared lines, start today to get those moved over to a receiver line that you own. You may never have any idea of switching central stations at all, but trust me, that day may come where you're ready to sell and you've got shared lines, and it will definitely set you back. In many cases, I'll go so far as to say in most cases, a buyer will not purchase your accounts unless they are on a receiver line that they can either take ownership of or that they can swing out to another central station. So please, please, if you don't do anything else, do that when we hang up off of our call today. So a couple other reports that you want to make sure that you're looking at periodically from your central station are signal reports. You may have accounts that have been online with you for 20 years, and they may have been at the same central station for all 20 years. But you may not have actually checked to see if those accounts are all sending signals. So a practice that you can certainly get into is sending periodic tests, monthly, daily, weekly, depending on the type of account. It's probably a good idea to have automatic test signals set up so that there is an alert if a test does not come through. If you didn't do that, ask your central station for a signal history report and reconcile with your account base. You want to see, and certainly an acquirer is going to want to see, that your accounts have sent signals within the last year. Hopefully, that it was an emergency, it was a false alarm, or just a signal on test, but you want to make sure, though, that something has come through. If you see that you've got customers that have not sent signals in a lengthy period of time, over a year, it's important that you contact them, ask them to put their accounts on test, get a signal sent. You, barring whether or not you have any intention of selling accounts, you want to make sure that the signals are being sent. You don't want there to be any kind of emergency or anything happen with your customer, but you also don't want the liability of it. So make sure that you're looking at those reports. And two, make sure that you're tracking any kind of high activity on your account base. You may know about it because your central station will likely be charging you for it, but take a look and see if there's something going wrong with particular accounts, that they've just got inordinately high activity, and address that. See what's happening with it so that you know that everything's okay with their panel, that it's not, there's no runaway activity or anything like that. But check these periodically. Time can go by very quickly, and you'll realize that you didn't realize that the customer wasn't sending a signal, or they were having a lot of activity. So finally, on central stations, make sure that you are familiar with the terms of your central station agreement. You want to know what services and capabilities that they're able to provide you, but you also want to know, too, what you're locking into. A lot of central stations today are, they're giving amazing pricing, and it's wonderful, especially coming off of a down economy where cash has been really tight. It's nice that you have this capability of saving a little bit of money on the monitoring, but understand, too, that you want to know what your commitment is. So if you get, 6 months free from monitoring, you're probably entering into a 3-year or so agreement with the central station, which is fine as long as you don't have any short-term goals or your exit strategy is going to be affected by that. Some buyers may not be willing to leave accounts at a certain central station, or the central station very well may say, all right, well, we told you you're required to keep your accounts here for 3 years. You're pulling them out after 15 months. You owe us X amount of dollars to make up for the additional time. So don't get caught in that situation. Make sure that you understand what your central station arrangement is. All right, so now we're going to talk about just adopting and following the sound billing and collections practices. This is something that hopefully a lot of you are already doing, but you've got to understand how critical this is. You want your operating procedures from the billing and collection side of things just to be automatic. You want to know, okay, we've got customers that when they hit that 32nd day, that a letter is automatically going out to them to remind them that they have not paid us, and it's a gentle reminder, and it's all with the idea of saving the customer. And we know at 40 days, the customer is going to get a phone call. And then we're going to follow that up with another letter if we don't reach them. You want to make sure that you have established sound procedures to help you with your collections. If you don't, and you get to 90 days, it will be much harder to collect from that customer who now owes you $100 versus one that owed you $32.99. Make sure that you've got great operating procedures as far as that goes. It is absolutely imperative. It will keep your attrition lower. It will absolutely make your customers much happier if you call them at 32 days than at 90 days when now everybody's mad, they don't want to pay you, the amount is too much, and now you're going to have an attrited customer. So start early, do it frequently, do it all in the vein of keeping the customer, but make sure that you're consistent with it. Changing lanes a little bit on that, you also want to understand what how your company's billing cycles impact you. So let's say, for example, you have customers that are billed annually. When you go to sell your accounts, you are now looking at what is called deferred revenue, and I think it's on this next slide. So nope, it's not, but you're not missing anything from that. So the deferred revenue would be, let's say I'm buying your accounts, you bill them annually. You bill them all in January, and I'm billing them in May. Or excuse me, I'm buying them in May. You've already collected for the entire year. So I can't start billing them again for another 7 months because I'm buying them the 5th month in. So let's say I'm paying you 40 times. Now I have to go back and deduct 7 multiples from that 40 times because you've already collected that 7 months from the subscribers. So whether you've actually collected it or not, I'm going to deduct that from what I'm paying you. So one of the ways that you can make life a lot easier on yourself for a multitude of reasons is looking at some shorter billing cycles. If you, from a cash flow perspective, monthly billing is great. The downside of monthly billing is if you're actually sending physical paper bills. So one of the things that you may really want to consider is moving your customers to an ACH, automatic bank draft, or credit card type billing. We're going to go back and talk about that in just a minute. But it's great for cash flow. Probably the best billing cycle, and this is of course my opinion, but the best billing cycle that I think is making companies the best with their cash flow, but also mitigates any deferred revenue, is billing quarterly. Let's use the deferred example again. So if you're billing somebody quarterly, and you build them all in December for the January, February, March cycle, and I buy them in February and I can start billing them in March, now you're only deferring off 1 month or one multiple. So even though, again, you're whole because you've already collected that money, it's still, you're going to feel less impact because of how much I have to deduct on the purchase price. So that's, something to keep in mind as you set up your subscribers, in their billing. The other thing, too, is if you are sending invoices, it's easier to send them 4 times a year than 12 times a year. So, again, just something to keep in mind. I want to go back again on the if you are billing the customer by ACH or credit card. Something that you want to make sure that you keep in mind is that there is a fair possibility that you are using a third party to do that billing for you. And if you are, there's something that you may have heard the term PCI Compliance in the last couple of years, but these are companies that keep your data and they encrypt your data for your subscribers so that it's not risky having the data. When you give them that information, you may not be hanging on to it, which is fine until some day comes around that you go to sell the accounts that are being billed by ACH or credit card. So a lot of PCI compliant companies, the ones that do third-party billing for you, may only be willing to give the data to another PCI compliant company. So for example, you were going to sell to Joe's Alarm down the street. You've been friendly competitors for years. You're ready to go out of business. You've known for years that Joe was going to be your buyer. You've got 75% of your account base is on ACH or credit card. Joe does his own ACH and credit card. He has a program where he's able to do it himself, and he wants all your data. Well, your third-party company that you've been using won't give it to him. You are now tasked with going out, contacting all of those customers, and collecting their data again so that they can continue to be billed in the fashion that they have been. Something to keep in mind, of course, you want to make sure that all of that data is stored properly. You don't want it to be at risk of anyone getting a hold of that data. But just make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into with any company that you're using and understand whether or not your information may be tied up. So that's, using the processes like, monthly or quarterly billing, ACH or credit card, all of those are going to help you have better and steadier cash flow. They're going to help you to actually run your business better because you will be able to do collections all throughout the year, not just in the first 3 months of the year, but whatever months that you've billed annually. They're going to make your standard operating procedures easy because you know exactly, how far into a billing cycle that you may be. All of these things are all intended to make your end game much, much easier for, when somebody comes in to look at how you have all of your billing set up. So really I think we're just about out of time. I've been asked to leave a few minutes at the end so that there was some time for questions if anyone has any. But I'd like to thank you again very much. I know it's a lot of information, and I really do hope that something that I talked about resonated with you. Please, following this call, if we did not get to your question or you just think of it tomorrow, feel free to contact me. I'll be happy to talk to you about any of this. It seems today that there are not many deals that I haven't seen something that surprises me, on each new transaction, and I'm happy to share anything that I can to help you make your business more successful. So thank you so much for your time, and Jacqueline, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yes, Thank you, Kelly. We do have a few questions to go over. The first question being, do buyers or lenders consider net attrition?
Well, actually, buyers and lenders are going to look at gross attrition. And, you know, a lot of companies that I talk to, they'll say, well, you know, I really don't have any attrition because everything that cancels, I'm putting a new account on. You know, great, but all you're doing is replacing your attrition instead of really fully growing. We are going to definitely be looking at your gross. We want to understand what your losses actually are. So we will not, when we look at your attrition calculation, we're not going to really look at your net attrition. We're mainly going to look at your gross, and we're also going to look at it in, you know, 6 months and 12 months. We want to see, you know, what's trailing and want to really understand, excuse me, what, you know, what your true losses actually are. I hope that answered the question.
Okay, great. A couple more. What if my contract is not up to date or specific standards?
Well, you want to make sure that you periodically have any contract type that you have or that you're using reviewed by an attorney. As a buyer, we've purchased accounts that literally the contract was over 30 years old. Thankfully, it had the elements in it that we found to be very important, and we were able to buy that contract as it stood without actually, you know, having to have it re-signed. But if you're not sure, and let's say you took a contract that was kind of a compilation of a few different unnamed companies, but larger companies in our industry, and you said, oh, this sounds good and this sounds good, and you kind of put it all together and slapped your name on it, I highly recommend that you have that reviewed by an industry attorney. And I say industry attorney, and I mean that because someone that does not understand our industry may feel like there are things that we include in the contract or that we like to see that they don't find are necessary. But we know something like third-party indemnification. We know that that's really important in this industry. So, you know, I definitely recommend that you have those checked periodically. You also want to make sure that evergreen laws, the auto-renewal laws, have not changed in your state. And if they have, are your existing contracts grandfathered in? You know, there are things like that you definitely want to keep track of.
Okay, and I do have a couple more. One attendee is located in the Caribbean outside of the U.S. Has Alarm Capital done anything outside of the domestic U.S., and would you look at possibilities if not?
As of today, we have not. We have looked at several transactions. You know, in Canada, you know, we've considered Puerto Rico, but as of today, we have not. I certainly wouldn't say that it's not something that we would consider. You know, we'd like to look at, you know, every potential partnership.
Okay, and I have another question. This attendee is requesting contracts that you could recommend for viewing. Of course, with no personal info on it. Again, I do have this attendee's personal information if this is a question that you need to reach out directly for.
Okay, and I'll be happy to. You know, I will give a plug to Ken Kirschenbaum. He has what I think is very affordable contract in the industry that you can go right to his website and purchase contracts from him, and he is making sure that those contracts, you know, they're caught up with the evergreen laws and you know, any other laws per state, but you know, we are also happy to review contracts and see if it's something that we would find acceptable. But if you're looking for a contract, you know, I definitely recommend Ken's.
Okay, and it looks like I have a final question. What should I do if I have shared lines at my central station?
Okay, we touched on this a little bit. You know, you need to start a process. You need to sit down and say, okay, I have this many accounts on these lines, and all of them are going to take a site visit, or all of them can be dialed into. You need to figure out how much time and expense it's going to take you to do any of it, but the the most important thing is to start today. Make sure that your focus now becomes on, it becomes having all of your accounts on lines that you control. You know, there are mapping programs that you can get. I think there's some free mapping programs on the web where you can actually plug data into them, so you can upload an Excel file of zip codes or addresses. You may be able to map out where particular accounts are located, and then as you have technicians on the road, if they're going to be in that neighborhood, you get in touch with the customer and do everything that you can while you already have a truck rolling to get them in to reprogram that panel, while they're out. If there are accounts that can be dialed into, make sure you get the software. And just, even if you are hiring somebody, part-time, or they're just per job to focus just on that, do it. It will, A, make your business more valuable, but it will save you so many headaches that when the time comes that you're ready to actually sell your accounts. And this is something that's really easy to forget about, but believe me, when the day comes that you're ready to sell, you want to make sure that the accounts are, that you have control of where they live.
Okay, great. Well, if there are no more questions, I would like to thank you so much, Kelly, for the very informative content. I'm sure that you'll have several follow-up questions after this webinar. But I'd like to remind everyone at this time that a recording of the webinar will be available in the YST Resource Library at esaweb.org, and CE credits are available as well upon request. You'll receive the same information in a follow-up email, so you'll have that contact information there. Also, please remember to save the date for the follow-up webinar, The 6 Keys to Building a High-Value Business Part 2, which Kelly will review the last 3 keys and will be held on Tuesday, November 19 at 1 p.m. Central. All attendees on this call today will receive an email notifying you when registration is open. You won't have to worry about missing that notice. Once again, thank you for participating in today's webinar sponsored by Alarm Capital Alliance. We hope that you found this content very useful. We appreciate your time, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks so much.